Yeah, we are waiting. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seat. The poet has arrived, and so has Matthias Kniep. Let me welcome on stage Matthias Kniep, who will chair the session with Wayne Holloway-Smith. Matthias is a literary scholar and programmer. He has received a PhD with a dissertation on concepts of heroism in popular culture. He studied literature, history of art, philosophy at the University of Kiel in North Germany. And since 2009, he has been working at the Literaturwerkstatt in Berlin, a very renowned literary institution in Germany. Matthias has led major programs for the Literaturwerkstatt, Poetry Rain, Berliner Beschwerdechor, das große Berlin-Gedicht, and most recently he has been working with the British Council's International Collaboration Program on a Belfast-Berlin project, a Versschmuggel collaboration with, between Haus für Poesie in Berlin and the Stimes Heaney Center in Belfast. And I hear the book is published now, and they will present it in Belfast at the end of this month. In 2014, we've already engaged on a Scottish-German Verschmuggel project, and I think some of you may have received the book from us. We are delighted to have Matthias join the British Council Literature Seminar for the third time, because Literaturwerkstatt Berlin is a house for poetry, and it is the most important partner for the British Council for poetry projects. I remember most wonderful readings there by Alice Oswald, Lavinia Greenlaw, Denise Riley, also the Wissen der Dichtung series with Michael Hoffmann, Marcel Bayer, Jan Wagner. We also regularly engaged with the Poesie Festival and the Zebra Poetry Film Festival in Berlin. And this year, Matthias will present Safa Kunyal at the Weltklang opening of the Poesie Festival in June. And he's planning an evening with 4 queer UK writers in September. We also now run a schools poetry competition with the House for Poesie, which is proving extremely popular. So I was delighted to hear that Daljit Nagra is also a specialist in that area. So you see, we really value our relationship with the House for Poesie and with Matthias. So please join me in welcoming Matthias Kniep, who will introduce Wayne Holloway-Smith.
Yeah, thanks, and welcome to the reading and the talk with Wayne Holloway-Smith. Welcome, Wayne. I started reading Wayne's work 2 or 3 years ago when his second book-length collection came out. It is called Love Minus Love. And since then, I consider myself a fan of his poetry. That's why when the British Council asked me to host this, I immediately agreed to do it. For the last few weeks, I've been living again with Wayne's poems. And although as a reader you are taken sometimes to rather dark places, it has not been an unpleasant experience. On the contrary, in fact, and we may talk about why that is. But first a few words of introduction, so I will tell you all the things you might already know. Wayne Holloway-Smith was born in Wiltshire and he lives in London. He has several books out. The pamphlet Beloved, in case you've been wondering, was published by a Donut Press in 2011. The first book-length collection, called Alarum, was published by Bloodaxe in 2017. It was long and short-listed for different prizes. Wayne will later read 3 poems from that collection. 2018, I Can't Wait for the Wending came out, published by Test Center Publications. I don't own that one, but as I understand it, it's not a book really. It's rather a box with unbound sheet that are not paginated.
Yeah, it's a box of poems. So I wanted to So I'm not talking over your introduction.
No,
it's
no,
ridiculous.
no, please do. Please
so
do.
it was, I don't really like narrative, like linear narrative, or I was rethinking linear narrative, so I didn't want to impose an order in which the poems could be read, so that it was unbound and put in this box, and then what people started to do actually is they would buy it, and then they would just use the individual pieces of card on which the poems were published. They would just use them as postcards. So they were just sending them to people. I was like, I don't know how I felt about that. Because these are serious works of literature, and they're being banded around the country, you know, with people sending news to their family and friends about their holidays, you know. That's all I've got to say about that, but yeah.
Okay. So 2 years later, Love Minus Love, the second book-length collection, was published again by Blood X, and this one was nominated for the T.S. Eliot Prize, among others. We will hear some of the poems from that collection in the first reading block. Then there are two pamphlets. The first one is called Lasagne, and it was published in 2020. And the second one is called Lobsters, and it was published in 2021. Wayne will read all of Lobster in the second reading block.
I'm sorry about that, by the way. Anyone wants to zone out at that point, it's fine. Remain seated, though.
But first, let's talk about some of the poems that you're going to read to set them up, really. But let me ask about the title of your first collection, Alarum. I looked that up, and it is defined as a call to arms or a stage direction, which means a loud disturbance. So tell me about that title and what it has to do with all the poems that are in that collection.
So alarum is it's just like an archaic spelling of alarm. And alarm, you know, as in, you know, it wakes you up in the morning, like this morning, when I got up early, and you have that horrible one on your phone. Also, yeah, like the kind of idea about being alarmed or being alert. And then like alarum as a kind of archaic, like you were saying, like a call to arms, but also the kind of stage directions. And I was kind of thinking about how those two things might sit in tension with each other in relation to like a collection where I guess we'll talk about what sort of it's doing, but like for me that kind of seemed to sit as an umbrella term for the book in some ways. Yeah, we can talk about that's. I'll ruin the questions if I go on to talk about much more, I think, you know.
You will read the first poem from the collection, and it's called The Air Itself. And for me, the first poem in a collection is always the really important poem. And poets tell me that all the time. And this poem sets the tone for the whole collection. And it's about a theater on the beach, a candy-colored theater it is called, and Punch and Judy play is performed. And you have the usual characters, you have the devil, you have the crocodile, and Punch and Judy, of course. But suddenly it takes on darker tones. And as a reader, you get the sense that this is a reenactment of a domestic scene, something that's getting out of hand. And I wanted to ask you about this sense of reenactment, and is your poetry some kind of candy-colored theater that is put to good use in casting of domestic devils in a way?
Crikey. As you can see where you occupy the position you do in this kind of literary arena, isn't it? So, yeah, does everyone, I didn't know actually whether in Germany people know what the Punch and Judy show is. Do you know what that is? Yeah. What's that? Oh, you will, yeah. Yeah, so like, largely speaking, it's a children's theatre show. But normally, like, it happens on the beach and that. And what happens is that you've got Mr. Punch, who's a dickhead. And he basically just domestically abuses his wife, domestically abuses his child, domestically abuses a crocodile, a string of sausages, the devil, a policeman. And somehow, as children, we're supposed to enjoy this. And I remember being kind of sat on one of those beaches, and all the kids were going wild for it, like laughing, and I just started crying. And it's really I suppose it was embarrassing for my dad, who had to like come and kind of collect me from this crowd of children and like carry me away while I was bawling my eyes out. Like, I think that's a very reasonable response, right, to seeing any kind of violence and stuff like that. Yeah, and then obviously, I guess as we continue talking, then yeah, you can kind of read that in parallel to some of my own childhood experiences, I suppose, which I think. I don't know if I mean, maybe you could describe. It depends what you understand the candy-coloured theatre to kind of mean. But like, I guess like for me, the whole point of writing a poem. Do you know, like Audre Lorde probably, someone very much more interesting and cleverer than me would say about poetry becoming. So you have like, you know, everyday English or whatever. And that has its own limitations, doesn't it, in terms of how you're able to express yourself. So, you know, between us, we've all experienced like 100 million different types of sadness, but we've got one word to pin it all on, which is sad. And that kind of, then how, when I say sadness, or I feel sad, how can I hope to communicate the particular type of sadness that I'm feeling at that time? I think that poetry, as Audre Lorde might say, allows you to create a vocabulary for the expression of your particular type of experiences. And that vocabulary doesn't exist. Like, it didn't exist before I wrote it, right, hopefully. So it's really hard to then reduce what you've written and the expression of what you've written back into everyday English with all of its limitations. You see what I mean? Which is why I find it sometimes a little tough to sort of describe what a poem is about, or whether, you know, like narrow it down to a particular. I'm not trying to, you know, make them sound more profound than they are, but that's the kind of practice that the reason why I do or write poems is for that particular reason. You know, hoping to create a vehicle for the expression of experiences and abstract kind of understandings that doesn't exist or didn't exist before I wrote the thing. That's yeah. Does that make any sense?
And I think it's already there in this first poem, but an ongoing theme seems to me passed down trauma or secondary trauma. In the second poem of the book, one that you don't read, it is a poem about the speaker's father, who's a builder, like your father was a builder. And it is said there, heartbreak is recycled like rain is recycled. So in what sense is this exactly what your poems are about? And to what extent do poems help you and the reader to become aware of this state of affairs, this handed-down trauma?
Crikey. Again, like, the more interesting than what I've got to say about the thing. So you're saying, what are you asking?
About the line in the second poem, the heartbreak is recycled like rain is recycled. Yeah, so the appearance, what your parents have experienced, and you experience it again in a way.
There's a way that it's sort of like things get replicated, or like your parents, to some extent, they, like everyone's got their limitations, haven't they? And you're always acting out of your own experiences, I suppose, right? Mm-hmm. So my mum has an emotional range, capacity in which she kind of would parent, or from which she would parent, and that is obviously quite dramatically affects my understanding of myself and my situation as a kid. But the line, I forgot about that line. Actually, it's quite a good line, isn't it? Like,
it's a very good line.
I feel like maybe I was a better poet like then. The idea, I think I was thinking like about, you know, like pop songs, and like there's rain is always in every pop song, especially about heartbreak. Like, and I was thinking that's let's find something else. Like, I can't write a poem now about heartbreak and use the idea of rain, because all the rain's already been used up. Like, there's no rain left for the rest of us. That was kind of like the angle that I initially started writing from, I think. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in that poem, talking about pop songs, in that particular poem, you form a one-man band.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the second one.
Yeah.
And to form a band, a one-man band with different instruments, it's in the last chapbook as well. So tell me something about that you are a whole band.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? Like, you're picking up on things that I'm basically becoming like my own covers band, almost. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, you do it for long enough. I've only done it for 2 books, and I'm already, you know, just repeating myself, is what you're basically saying.
No,
like, so
it's very.
You've got one thing that you do when you do it over and over again. Like, no, I don't know. Like, I think it's quite interesting, the idea of, I don't know, like, I guess the most obvious example is that, you know, Whitman, like, I contain multitudes, you know, like, do I contradict myself? And I think that the whole of everything that I'm sort of writing or whatever is just full of contradictions all the way through, you know. And when I talk to about poems to like students and that, they kind of want you to lay down sort of formula or rules for them to succeed in their own kind of poetic practice, and they're always picking me up because I'll say something and then they'll be like, well, but in this poem that you wrote, you didn't do that. I'm like, yeah, no, I didn't. Like, and I think that, like, the idea of, like, I don't know, like a one-man band or like several instruments playing all at once or whatever seems to be like an interesting expression of that in some ways, but hopefully not the only one. But like, yeah, I didn't realise that I'd repeated it, so thanks for pointing that out. I'll be sure not to do that again. Like, if anyone after this has got any other ideas of how you can speak about contradictions outside of being a one-man band, like, do share that with me, because it turns out I need a new thing.
And there's this poem you're going to read. It's called Some Wains, and this one band thing. You're playing with your own name there, and there's some dwelling in possibility. The sense that identity is not necessarily a fixed thing. And I wanted to ask you: is this something poetry provides you with, a kind of secret weaponry to test different personas?
Yeah, well, Some Wains is like, it's that, yeah, hold on. So like, I don't know how well known the name Wayne is in Germany, but in the UK, like, it has a particular kind of stigma attached to it, I suppose. It's a very working class name, and it has, like, I'm really interested in the way that, like, you know, value is higher and lower forms of value like arbitrarily apportioned to particular social groups, particular practices, you know, lived experiences and names. And like, so one day I Googled, like, should I call my child Wayne? And like, the internet was pretty clear that you probably shouldn't. Like, Mumsnet were, do you know Mumsnet? Yeah, they said no. Like, you shouldn't call your son Wayne. They said that one post said the name Wayne screams council estate. Wayne is the type of character that will steal your hubcaps and beat their wife. And I was like, I don't know whether that's a fair characterization. You know? So like, there's also, like, within that poem, there's obviously, like, there's like some sort of silliness. Puns and whatnot, and also like other famous Waynes, or like it tries to characterize other famous Waynes. So the most famous at the moment, probably, or when that poem was written, was probably Wayne Rooney, who's like a footballer, who's like, I don't know if you know him, is a big guy, like kind of like stereotypical version of a Wayne in some ways. So like there's that, and then there's, you know, there's other ones that have popped up throughout my kind of childhood. And the thing about it is that you're kind of having to navigate, so it's almost like some Waynes, sorry, that's the title of the poem as well, but some of the Waynes in the poem called Some Waynes maybe are like versions of myself, and some are like different famous Waynes that I've had to navigate or been kind of compared to throughout, like, my kind of... So when it gets to the end, there's a bit where they all kind of link hands. and I have to march through them, like, and it's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of as much as I can sort of say about that poem in many ways.
Could you say something about first names? You use them a lot. And I'm always fascinated about first names in poems. Alice Notley does that too, and I love Alice Notley. Yeah. And she names someone, and there's a sense of intimacy. I don't know the person, but the first name there suggests that I know them, and I kind of do. And tell me about that in your poems.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. Do I do that quite a bit? I don't think I do. I mean, yeah, Alice Notley, Frank O'Hara, like Danez Smith more recently has been doing that. Yeah, I think the only kind of device really, isn't it, is that kind of like bringing the reader closer, I guess, to a person that you have some level of familiarity with. Yeah, I mean, I don't really do it. Like, I think, sorry, I've just drank loads of fizzy water. So, like, so I think that a level of intimacy, familiarity is probably the main reason, but lots of the things that I write are kind of a little bit improvisational. So I don't really think them through. I don't have that kind of idea of that this poem has this very fixed language system and it can't be changed around, because if you lose it, I don't believe really, or for my poems at least, I don't really believe in that ridiculous phrase like best words in the best order. Like I feel like that's quite a masculine thing. You know, like that you hear this awful thing a lot, right? Where in reviews or in blurbs at the back of books they say, you know, he has a muscular control of language. But what the fucking hell does that even mean? A muscular control of language? Like as if language like, you know, structuralism and post-structuralism didn't ever happen. Suddenly, like, I'm a poet and I have this very unique version of and vision of the world, and you lot are really lucky, you know, because I'm going to code that in poetry language, and then if you lot are clever enough and you studied hard enough, you can decode it, and then you can keep my special vision of the world. Like, what sort of bollocks is that, you know? Like, I don't believe it.
So let's hear some poems.
Oh yeah. I'm going to put this one down.
Yep.
So I can never work these things out. So am I standing too close? So I've got to put these glasses on now. Look. It says, because you've got a list of the poems that I'm supposed to read, and if I miss one out, will you tell me? Because I kind of sometimes do. You know, we were talking about this earlier, right? I sometimes. Anyway, all right. So this poem's called "The Air Itself," and it's the one that we began discussing. I'm aware that people are taking pictures. It's really like, not that I don't, but like. You understand? Like, well, I'm like, maybe we could do one now where I'm looking input. So if I just do the, you can take one. All right, and now we can crack on. And, yeah. All right. So yeah, I'm going to read 3 then from this one, which is called Alarum, and then there's a confusing amount from this book that I might have forgotten some. So if you're like, hey, you're supposed to read this one, then you can just say, okay. The air itself, inside the candy-coloured theatre, open to the beachfront, sweet to the retina, and wriggling, you might say, in the palaver of its excess, is suddenly still as the found-out devil. It's a drunk man discovered by the frightening silence of morning, or it's a sneaking crocodile caught with a sausage in its muzzle, or it's the reality of silence, the part of a child's face when its ice cream slips from the cone. It's trapped, the air is, as perpetual rudeness is trapped in the dead slap of a flat stick, the very second it's wrapped, the exact second it's given to the head of its pinstriped, its pinnied victim, oh Judy, and it's stayed, like the violence of a tossed-up baby, or the shadow the mournful shadow of a man, its penumbra of bent nose and sticky out chin, slow rocking and almost kazoo-like in its shrill and don't blame me fauna, while respectable mothers do pick up their infants, while husbands do throw an implicit arm over the wife's shoulder, as grandparents, swathed in sun cream, do ease their deck chairs shut, and everything just sort of creeps soft and backwards as the sea creeps in outroads of awkwardness. It's whispering, the air is. As the sand here might whisper, I don't like it anymore. Please, for God's sake, take me with you. I was thinking yesterday, I was watching Bernadine do a talk, and what's really, really cool about it is like she would be reading, and then all of a sudden she'd stop and like be like, oh no, this is something that you need to know, and then we'd just like do a bit of explanation, and then just crack on and read again. I was like, God, I wish I could do that. I'm not confident enough to do that. Like that takes, I don't know, there's an area of expertise that I thought was brilliant in that. Oh, by the way, I wanted to say thanks to you lot for having me, and also for Bernadine for setting this whole thing up. Is it, just very briefly, if we could just kind of clap Bernadine for doing that, because like it's really good to see Bernadine getting all the stuff that she has deserved for a load of years, and like there's not just her own work, but the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that some people don't know about, the work that she's been championing, and the hard kind of graft of making sure that people that don't normally get seen are starting to get seen. That said, you know, I am a white heterosexual male that is standing at this platform now, about to read another poem about my own name. So, you know, this is some Wayne's. Magic Wayne with flowers, Wanye West. Box of tricks Wayne. Wayne sat on Facebook, proving he loves his daughter. The sporty Wayne loves himself skinny. Bold Wayne, head like a rocking chair. Amy Winehouse. Wayne the ironic, fat Wayne, tits pushed beneath a Fred Perry Wayne, Wayne from near Slough. Ugly Wayne, the unlikely mess of his wife, canned laughter. Wayne who renamed another Wayne Fleabag, track-suited Wayne, your hubcaps, his pockets. Home and a Wayne, Randy Wayne, Wayne, fountains of him, every drop snug to someone's mum. Wayne, boyfriend of Stacey. Wayne Kerr, Wayne the rap star, gold teeth, grime. Wayne the superhero, Wayne the cowboy, dancing Wayne, in tights, it's waning men. A cavalcade of Waynes fucking each other up in a Jeff Hattersley poem in a pub in Barnsley. Purple Wayne, Wayne's World Wayne, Wayne Slang Tang Smith, a Wayne in a manger. All of them have stopped what they're doing, all of them divided in two rows and facing each other, all of them, arms raised. They are linking fingers, all of them, an architrave through which I celebrate, marching like I'm the bridegroom, grinning like I'm the bride. Cheers. If I was as confident as Bernie in that, there's a couple of points where I would have stopped and been like, so Jeff Hattersley wrote a poem called Brain Surgery on a Barnsley Pub Snooker Table or something like that. It's actually really funny, but it's basically everyone in that poem is called Wayne, and they're all just beating each other up. And that was the first time where I thought, like, hold on a second, like, I'm getting the piss taken out of me here. This is a longer poem that I ain't read for ages, so like, if I make any mistakes, I'll own them afterwards. It's called There's Absolutely No Way to Make This Real Life Interesting. My ostensible father downstairs is sore to the dickens about everything, no matter. My illness is all right, 2 fingers up the throat of itself, nutrients bawling across the panels of the bathroom, tears backing up in the backs of its eyes, and desperate sometimes laughter. As a child, my illness had fat thighs and a scar on its lip that my mother assured me would one day disappear. As a child, my illness was trying itself out, holding itself at angles in the mirror. It wanted so much to be the beautiful boy at school, or something very wrapped up and lifted, a wonderful hybrid creature, and dead almost beneath its blankets. As a child, it was wrong in knitwear, eating Mars bars, bowls of ice cream, pasta, cold beans, bowls of ice cream, cold beans, Mars bars. Picture this, my illness in a gym, hidden by large men and mirrors. Picture this, a field of red flowers. Hidden in a field of red flowers, my illness, dressed in a wide-rimmed straw hat, is eating all the red flowers. Imagine how many surplus calories you have to eat to gain 1 pound, said the therapist in her green cardigan. Think back, she said, in an attitude of prayer. Allow your inner child to speak out. She spoke from beneath long orange hair. What's it saying? What do you want to say, little illness? A shadow carefully distinguishes from all of their shadows when my illness goes with my friends out driving to the cinema and with popcorn. It's distrustful of the girl at the counter because maybe the girl at the counter will give it Coke instead of Diet Coke, all that sugar. When my illness goes with them, it waits till my friends are out of earshot and whispers to the girl at the counter, I'm diabetic. Please don't get it wrong. I ran for a long time with my illness and smoked. Dear pillow, my illness said, I'm empty as a packed lunch. Dear pillow, how many calories in a red flower? The pillow never did speak back. Cat food, Mars bars, bread from the freezer, pasta, so much cake, bread from the freezer, 3 different types of cheese. The therapist suggests a self-help book for my illness. My friend's mum buys it. The self-help book addresses my illness as she. Sometimes she just wants to be scooped up helpless and placed into a bathtub. My illness grew into itself so much that it ran one day 23 miles from my parents to my nan's house, trucks on a motorway, horns down Sunday lanes, across some shortcut cornfields, and arrived just in time for dinner. My illness is taking all of the red flowers into itself, so the field is just filled with my illness. My illness taking all of this imagery into itself until it's outgrowing the place where it hides. My friends now speeding past in cars. Ostensibly, my father is downstairs, sort of the Dickens about everything. So if I'd stop to read it. I'll read the second bit. Carry on reading the book. If there's bits that I forget to read, and this is the one I'm going to forget to read stuff from. So this is a confusing book because it's got no titles. It's all just called Love Minus Love, and a bit like that box of poems, really. I think you can read these in any order, and they kind of make sense. I'm going to sort of, I'd normally just read all the way through, but since I'm going to read a super long poem later, I thought I'd just break it up and tell you a bit. So this first thing here, I found a photo of my dad. My dad's dead. He's just really hot. Like, I mean, just like really hot, like hotter than, like he's like much hotter than me. And it's really weird to like have a dad that's like so much more attractive than you. Like to the point where you know, like when you go, I don't know, you take like your girlfriend back to your mum's for the first time, she cracks out all those photo albums, right? And I was literally this girl, she's leafing through it. And at one point, like, she hit upon a picture of my dad, and she made a noise that I've never heard anyone make. So this kind of, yeah, okay. Keep the photo of my dad smoking and looking like James Dean. I've been so lovingly breathed into by the empty promise of that cigarette. That kiss-curled head in the black and white photo, he is my age or younger. He is maybe 15 in that photo, back-knuckled to his own dad's barn door. He's slender in too tight jeans. He's going to do something shallow, soon, and very bad. I'm trying hard to follow his example, but I don't want to die. Can't lift a heavy thing or get into fights past the lighter. I just like smoking and watching TV. Silent, like his photo. In his eulogy, they said he loved beef. Always beef in his sandwiches. His hair is receding. He is being very attractive. In his photo, he's going to do something very soon. He's gone. It's already done. This is a real short thing. You know what a Cavalier is? Like a car? Yeah. So I don't know why I'm asking you like that. I don't know what cars there are in Germany. Here's your mother. She is sleeping, dressed in ostentatious pink, in the passenger seat of a brown beige Vauxhall Cavalier. Her hair done, perfect, curated, the windows done, uptight. The exhaust fumes are your father gently filling up the car. This is a bit, I went to a hypnotist, trying to give up smoking, you know. Tried everything. I thought the hypnotist was a bit of a charlatan, to be honest. Like, yeah, so like, it was in this little room with no windows in his house, in a place called Tooting, in London, and like his probably long-suffering wife, you could just hear her outside, like padding around in the corridor. It was pretty nuts. Anyway. I want you to leave your body now, he tells me. His voice, not so much hypnotic as reaching for the hypnotic. But I leave it anyway, sitting in the upright chair of a windowless room for a place that's higher up, that's not quite the windowless room, though I'm aware of my body's particular kind of breathing down there, dressed in my favorite shirt. And somehow up here, I'm dressed in that same shirt, which is, I feel suddenly, becoming very important. Its color pertaining to a quiet hue of knowing I can't quite explain. And I do not think about the money I've given him, the man who is speaking. But I'm looking instead down on a yellow kitchen in Swindon, upon a tiny, remembered body I have found crying or about to cry in little white shorts. And there is carpet streaked with blue, and there is the noise of a terrible thing that is happening, and there is summer outside with its other children. He doesn't understand, does he? Says the man. He's so young. And I understand the shirt that he will have to grow through all of the terrible things to fit. I can feel my body now, filling up the space inside its soft and lavender-scented cotton. Which was the one? There was another mum poem, weren't there?
Yeah.
What was that one called?
No, the next one is One Story Goes.
Oh yeah, cool. That's easier. Yeah. So one of the things that I was thinking about is like how I'm not going to bother actually telling you all the boring shit, but like basically, like I read this thing on the internet about it was like a kind of like weird coincidence thing, and then it was unbelievable. So then I Googled it, and I found out that there's like 3 or 4 different dodgy internet websites that say the same thing. And then I saw a picture of the person that it talks about, so then I started believing that it was true. One story goes, a man on his lunch break... Oh, fucking hell, sorry. You're going to take a sip? Have you heard those new rappers that basically just say that do that? There's like, and then that's what I was trying to do there. Like, you know, like after this is like me kind of launching my hip hop career. One story goes, a man on his lunch break was hit by a falling baby, falling from a very high window of a building the man was passing on his lunch break. The man saved the baby's life, accidentally getting landed on. The man saved that exact baby's life, accidentally getting landed on 1 exact year later, on his lunch break, breaking the slightly more grown baby falling from the same window's fall, accidentally. The man's name is Joseph Figlock. What is sad is the realization this baby could literally mean anything, but doesn't. It does not. What I don't know is whether that baby, a toddler by now, has fallen a third time, whether he's falling still, and at this moment crying out, "Where is Joseph Figlock? I can't see him. Why isn't he here?" Just going to quickly read this one. I'm just going to slide this one in. Elsewhere, a man is cutting down a tree. He works at it night and day, his big heaving chest, grown tired, soaring at that thick trunk. After a long while, the tree is still standing, though at a tilt towards his house, where his family sit. There's a pie in the oven. There are toys and the laughter of children. It's a beautiful home, but he's come this far and it's taken so much effort. And then there's a couple of bits that I can't remember which one I was supposed to read, so I'm just going to quickly...
Page 30, the one about a mother who looks like Demi Moore.
Oh, yeah. But can I read the other one instead? That's like, there's like 3 or 4 of these, and there's another one that maybe I just think might be funnier or something. But now I can't find it, so this is amateur hour, ain't it? Oh, I think it's already... I expect you've all got my books in front of you, so if you can just point me to... Ah, here you go, right. Here's your mother. Oh, this is based on an anecdote, again, from Patti Smith. You know Patti Smith, don't you? Yeah. Her biography called Just Kids. Here's your mother. She's Patti Smith and gazes hungry in November in 1969 in Manhattan, in the Horn and Hardet automat, upon a sandwich in a vending machine behind its glass, with 1 dime less in her hand than she needs. Just then, your dad appears dressed as Allen Ginsberg, buys her the sandwich, and now she has to sit and listen to him talk about Walt Whitman for the rest of her life. But instead of talking about Walt Whitman, he is silent. Suddenly, they're both rotated 90 degrees to the left, and instead of an automat, there are only armchairs, a carpeted living room, a TV. And then is it the Posh Mums one? Yeah, that's the one. Cool. It's only why I just write really long poems now, because there's only one poem, and then no one has to do what Matthias is doing now and just keep feeding me the poems I'm supposed to be reading. This poem won the National Poetry Competition in 2018. The Posh Mums are boxing in the square, roughing each other up in a nice way. This is not the world into which I was born, so I'm changing it. I'm sinking deep into the past and dressing my own mum in their blue spandexes, svelte black stripes from hip to hem, and husbands with a better disposition towards kindness, or at least I'm giving her new lungs. I'm giving her a best friend with no problems, and both of them pads, some gloves to go at each other with in a nice way. I'm making it a warm day for them, but also I'm making it rain, the two of them dapping it out in long shadows. I'm watching her from the trees grow, strength in her thighs, my mum, grow strength in her glutes, my mum, her back taut upright, her knees. I'm watching her grow, no bad thing in her stomach, no tumour. Her feet do not hurt to touch, my mum, she is hopping. Sinews are happening, wiry arms developing their full reach, no bad thing explodes. Sweat and not gradual death. I'm cheering, no thing in her stomach, no alcohol, no cigarettes with their crotonaldehyde. Let my dad keep those. No removal of her womb. And I'm cheering her on in better condition. Cheering, she's learning to fight for her own body, in spandex, her new life, and though there is no beef between them, if her friend is gaining the upper hand, I'll call out from the trees her name, Christine. And when she turns, as turns she must, my mum, in the nicest possible way, can slug her right in the gut. Thanks.
So thanks. And now I want to talk about classism. Classism. It's popular in Germany right now, mainly through authors like Annie Ernaux and Edouard Louis.
Right.
And it plays an important role in your own work again and again. It's almost a genre of its own. And how would you position yourself within this genre? And what role do feelings of guilt play in it? In one of your poems, there's this line, it's a shameful sort of understanding.
Yeah, so it's like, I'm thinking in my head now, I know I've got a panel discussion about class tomorrow, and I've got like one thing to say about class, and this is like the only thing that I've got to say. So like, it's like, do I make something else up on the spot now and ruin it for tomorrow when there are so many intelligent people in the room and other people on the panel? Probably. So the thing that really hit me about this whole thing, right, and the thing that I'm really interested in, is this that I was talking about earlier. The sense of higher and lower value that is arbitrarily apportioned to certain jobs, certain practices, certain people, certain places, right? And the thing that kind of struck me about it when I was doing my PhD and becoming a poet, which are two things that arbitrarily, by the way, are seen as of higher value, yeah? Which is weird, isn't it? Like, so when I go back to Swindon, for example, where I'm from, it's a really working class town, all of my friends are like plumbers and carpenters and that. And they're like, oh my God, like now you're like a poet and an academic. I'm like, fine, but like my PhD has never been able to unblock a toilet, you know? Like, the thesis don't do that. If anything, it contributes to the blockage. So for me, like, these systems of value don't really make any sense. But like, everything seems to be, and this is like, I can't even remember. There's a guy here called Lewis, right, who interviewed me at some point, and he was quoting bits of my PhD to me, and which I'd forgotten. And there's like this one quote there about guilt and about shame that he'll know the name of the guy that said it that I've completely forgotten. So Lewis, if you're here, do shout the name of the guy out. But like, basically he was talking about, like, you can tell that society is viewed through a middle class lens, yeah? And even working class people view themselves through this middle class lens because they have shame about the things that, you know, they have shame about their position, they have shame about like what they own and what they don't own, what they know and what they don't know, the spaces that they're able to move through. And that's just absolutely obvious, right? So like, what I think is nuts is like, when I got a PhD, all of a sudden I'm middle class. And I'm like, well, hold on a second, like, why am I, how does that work then? Because like, and I was like, oh, it's because like, working class people aren't allowed to be seen to have or to be in these positions which have arbitrarily higher value apportioned to them, right? So yeah, I'm a poet and I teach a bit at university and I edit a poetry magazine, but I really strongly feel that I still need to slightly identify as having at least come from a working class background or being working class, because we have a right to be in those positions that are of value as well.
Your parents are in your poems all the time, your family. How do they feel about that?
Well, my dad's dead, so he doesn't feel much about it.
May I ask, when did he die?
So he died during when I was writing Alarum, the first book, and then it kind of changed a bit actually. So Neil Astley, who edits Blood Axe, actually said like, well, your manuscript. When I handed my manuscript, so we agreed I'd be published. Like, in 2015, we agreed that I was going to be published in 2017, and then when I delivered the manuscript, it looked massively different from when I gave it to him originally. Largely because I'd finished a PhD and was quite pissed off about the stuff that we were just talking about. So there's a huge section in there, like a 16-page thing that kind of goes through that a little bit. It's talking about language and whatever. And then the other bit that changed is that my dad died. Like we were talking about earlier in terms of the limitations of the English language and how you kind of almost think in that language, don't you? I couldn't really, when your dad dies, everything becomes about your mum, right? So you get the phone call, and then everything is about your mum. So you go back to your hometown, and it's all about your mum, and taking care of her, and making sure that everything's okay, all the way through to like the funeral, and then the funeral's like absolutely horrific, especially if you have one of those like fake humanist funerals, you know, where the guy is trying to like, he's almost like a shit children's television presenter, where he's trying to pretend that he had some air of familiarity with my dad. And the stuff that he was saying was absolutely wild. At one point, they played a Rolling Stones song, right? His whole shtick was my dad was miserable, right? He was miserable. He wasn't a very nice man, but he wasn't miserable. But that was like the position that they kind of entered into on this thing. Anyway, so the last thing that he said, we're going to, as the coffin goes through into, you know, being incinerated effectively, we're going to listen to a Rolling Stones song, one of Victor's favourites, which was called I Can't Get No Satisfaction, which ultimately Victor never did. And I was like, what? All right, yeah, cheers for that. Like, anyway, that was a long way of avoiding a question that I've forgotten that you asked me in the first place. I was talking about my parents a lot, yeah. Yeah, so my dad didn't engage with that sort of stuff. He didn't really know. He didn't know. I grew up in a house with no books at all. Yeah, none. I think I had the Gideon's Bible in my room, because you all get given that at school. And that was it. And so in terms, like, I don't think my mum actually, she's read the National Poetry Competition poem, the Posh Mums one. I don't know what she thinks about it. And I gave her some of the money, like, from winning it. And she hasn't read Love Minus Love. Like, she hasn't read it. I don't think they read, they wouldn't read poems. So that she kind of loosely knows that I'm in Berlin at the moment, like, doing stuff. But, like, she doesn't know we're talking about her right now. Yeah.
And then I want to talk about the one poem you read is about the eating disorder. And in Germany, there at the moment is a discussion about who's allowed to speak on whose behalf. And from the 1990s onwards, in Germany at least, it was frowned upon among poets to confuse the speaker in a poem with the author. And this seems to be changing now. Authenticity is becoming more and more important. And the link back between the one who is speaking in the poem and the author is more and more important. So when you talk about illness, is it important that you have actually experienced it? As this poem you read, there's absolutely no way to make this real life interesting. Do you have to testify to it with your own biography?
I'm not going to make any broad proclamations on what a poet should or shouldn't do, but for me, like, especially writing these books, there's a sense of urgency. I think, like, there was in the UK, and like some of my peers here can back me up, right? There was this big thing where irony was the thing, right? So any kind of emotion was expressed through ironic distance. And like, I think like people of color, like queer writers, working class writers don't really have the luxury of irony, you know? Like, I was very much, there's a sense of urgency, which is why like lots of my favorite poets fall into those demographics. There's a sense of urgency within that. And like, so I write or have written from that sense of urgency. So in terms of this poem, well, yeah, I have it. Like, also the other thing is, when you're a working class man, like the big moment for like in the 20th century, like everyone, you think about working class, firstly, everyone thinks that they're white. And secondly, that's usually conflated with like masculinity. And like, thirdly, it's always linked back to that 1950s lot, you know, Alan Sillitoe and, you know, Waterhouse and all of them lot, Amos maybe. And they, and it was this whole like working class anti-hero, you know? Which is bullshit. Like, so working class, he's rebelling against society by, you know, beating up his wife or like having sex with someone else's wife or drinking loads. He's like, oh right, so within this middle-class gaze that we've already spoken about, he's already lost. But we read those things for entertainment. Like Saturday night and Sunday morning, big novel. Saturday night is the bit where the dude's rebellious and does all those things. That's 87% of the book or something like that. Sunday morning is the end bit where they see him as kind of like having been tamed, you know? Like, and I don't buy into that sort of stuff. Like, and I think that, like, masculinity, working class masculinity, like, it's important to challenge those kind of mainstream narratives about what a working class male identity can be, right? And one of the ways, so, yeah, you can clap, that's fine. A smattering. But like, I think that one of the ways to do that is through vulnerability, right? I mean, look at the state, I'm like, you know, Joelle has already said today that she's confident she could beat me up in a fight. And that's absolutely true, she could. She actually could. Joelle, you're just coming back in the room, just talking about you. Yeah, we were outside, she said, I'm pretty confident I could beat the shit out of you in a fight. And that's true, but I don't really have any, I don't care about that. And also the other thing is, like, vulnerability, when you're talking about mental health issues, like, not many men until very recently would have been speaking so much about having, like, eating disorders and stuff like that, which basically my entire childhood and into my early 20s was riddled with. And so in kind of, I think, like, you kind of problematize or make complex the idea of a mainstream notions of working class masculinity as soon as you start speaking about things like this. You know, and in the, you know, you had working class poets in the 90s and whatever, but it was, you know, one of them was talking to me recently about how he got patted on the back, like, for putting a dick in every other one of his poems, you know? And like that kind of, it was a very, you know, football and trains and fighting and, you know, womanizing. It's like all of the things that the 1950s already did that I don't like were performed in that way. So I just wanted to do it differently, I guess.
I like what you said about irony in the poem. The same goes for melancholy. I can't stand it. Yeah. But we're already late, and you have to read Lobsters now.
Oh,
but please, you told me that this is your favorite book. Just tell me why that is.
I think that there's something about, I like fragmentation, like non-linearity. I like messing with the syntax a little bit. And I feel like in the first two books I was doing that, and in this book, I kind of, yeah, push it. I pushed that a little bit more. I just want to say one thing really quickly about, it's a pamphlet. And you were saying that in Germany, pamphlets aren't really that big, are they?
We're not that familiar with the concept of a pamphlet or a chapbook, but how is that different for you? I guess it's not secondary. Is this a field of experimentation in contrast to the other book-length collections?
I think it's just as important as a collection, and it's weird that we view them as separate. Like, if you think about the last century, some of the biggest moments were like, what, lunch poems by Frank O'Hara, Howl by Allen Ginsberg, like Wasteland. By the way, an expert in the UK, an academic expert on T.S. Eliot called Jeremy Noel Todd tweeted recently that The Wasteland and Prufrock, right, because they're only pamphlets, they wouldn't have qualified as eligible for the T.S. Eliot Prize, if you can imagine. So, like, I feel like I don't think value should be measured by how many pages there are. So with this, like, it's my favorite thing that I've done, but if it was, you know, 3 pages longer, it would have been a book. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Anyway, yeah, I'll try and read it. I'm going to speed read it because we're late, and I don't want to be that. How long have we got?
We started 10 minutes late, so we have now 15 to 20 minutes.
I can get it done in 15 to 20 minutes.
And then we take some questions from the audience, okay?
All right, cool. All right. One of the things I learned about, with me and Joelle were talking earlier about the curse of dedicating a book to someone, is if it's someone that you're in a relationship with, they ultimately break up with you, and then their names are in, you know. And you can measure all of my stages of life by who I've dedicated my book to, which person I was going out with at that point. I'm just going to read it. Lobsters. It comes from a thing, you know, like, I can't remember the exact quote, so I'm going to butcher it, but like, Andy Warhol said something about the lobster, the beauty of the lobster's colour only comes out when it's dropped in boiling hot water. The lobsters there's no lobster in this book, but I was just thinking about that. Singing, I miss everything about my life. 3 sticks of lipstick, I ate 4 buttons, I ate the smoke from her red jacket, a custard pot so full of rage it torched my tiny childhood, a heart beating against the 4 pillars of the room, fresh from the microwave, we had discovered pain was dielectric and lumpy, tipped into the body from the outside. Oh Lord, did anyone ask for this kind of touch? Cymbal crash, mandolin, my heart, and my body is a group of sudden musicians striking up a tune of longing. They don't notice our acts as living things becoming objects. The radio is getting hammered now. I am singing myself into dead stuff. I ate the shadows. Now the shadows are retreating. Imagination is a malady. This is the last time I will write about your leaving. One life may hide another. Now she is gone, and here I am, like sellotape, trying to hold a river in place. A soft tuba, 3 perfect violins. I'm sorry we existed like this. You woke up and were suddenly healed. To talk about the original hunger was impossible. Your hair screwed in tight, your scalp fixed to the bone, your mind banged down with all this love. We source our understanding of the world from our own bodies. Strings eking out a little more emotion at this point. A voice, 2 voices singing. How did we get down here among the potato peelings? We hold ceremonially our fingers. When I love you suddenly rings false. When I'm full of doubts hides I'm certain about something. One of us said, I am made of hotness. One of us said, and this is heartbreaking. An antibacterial wipe in the dog bowl. I ate her hairspray. I ate all of the emotional music. I ate Monster Munch right along the way to my 30s. And we arrived knowing the whole world is happening beneath us. We're just not allowed to have much of it. It's so full on. Soup in the pot, broccoli, hot, clever water. I wanted to place a good moment on my tongue, hold several deeds close to my skin. I wanted to tell you something beautiful, so I did. To be a person, I must outgrow my own shrinking. I ate my own trainers, I ate piano music, then a lovely little silence into which you emerged like spilling water, mouthed my slow and sad-rocking song at the bottom of everything. I only wanted to be useful, to shout out the window at night time, is everyone okay? And for the world to shout back. Out the window at night time, a scurry of gerbils, a street party. Inside the window, a creeping history of the blood. Outside, foxes biting the nighttime rotten. Inside, you were gone, walking from one room to another. Out the window, I literally shouted your name. Is everything okay? Silence. I ate the silence. Then, a slow double bass starting up. One of us said, eventually we have to pay the mind back. And sticking bits of my damp hair on my head with spoonfuls of honey, I received word the Debenhams in Swindon had closed. The chip shop in Swindon had closed. The libraries in Swindon on fire. My childhood was shutting off its lights. 3 dull drum beats. It feels as if I'm about to be born, but can't, alone and into the present tense. If there is a God out there, O wafers of Christ, I am listening. At the bottom of everything is our drunk parents. At the bottom of everything is a piece of stained furniture. At the bottom of everything, behold, he comes riding on a cloud, his muscular temper, a noise under the lights of the kitchen. At the bottom of everything is onions. At the back of my throat, even then, singing, look, I love you. I said I just need a use for this body and its music, a destination for people to arrive at, putting on a clean-smelling shirt, stepping each leg through cotton trousers and walking out the door frame lit up and smashed to bits by the morning. Snow in your hair, snow in my eyes, and yeah, one of us said, here are some trees. At the bottom of everything is, we are grown up and escapees, fireworks in the beard of God. I ate a freckle, a tiny piece of childhood, hallelujah. I have the exact same amount of mother I always had. One of us said, I got touched in the bath and it gave me an eating disorder. One of us said, the earth will swallow us up and it would give me an illness. And we spoke about the dead so much the house came down. A lit match, then the sound of several lit matches burning. The mornings of the last fine days were the freshest, most limpid. The apples are still being ignored, and the crickets are screaming bloody Tuesday, and the sky everywhere. You don't seem to be happy, one of us said. Oh yes, I am happy, but I am sad. The earth will swallow us, but not yet. I ate all the camera angles when they circled, and it was just me in the middle of the road with a lolly stick. From the other side of the long city, your face appeared inside my pocket, an accordion sliding through my body. In one dream, everyone I've ever known, oh Lord, was holding my wrists and feet, sleeves and backside, so many hands on my body thrown up, then caught, and again, my stomach through the air, my chemoreceptor was butterscotch in the blood, so much love stuffed with vanilla, salt, my inner ear was corn syrup, my throat filling with alkaline and treacle. Thank you, I am soft-crucked and laughing myself hoarse, thinking about it, singing, look, I love you. The kindness in me is welling as if I were laying a hard-boiled egg. One of us said, we eventually have to pay the mind back. Continuous and slow good pain, chopping up my fringe. Family I had to step over drunk to leave. Look, I love you. Sliding from the sofa, grey carpet growing over my limbs while all of the shouting keeps going. I've locked their names behind my jaw. One of us said, let the dead bury their own dead. But what are we supposed to do with this massive shovel? I dug holes in the carpet we can sit down later and cry in. Remember how much fun it was watching our fathers bang their gums on the enameled sink? Not much. I'm so frantic to shrug off this inheritance, but why am I running these molars around my palm like a beaded necklace? I am carrying so much of this Swindon, a walloping inside the guts like a child hid inside a cutlery drawer. But, okay, wow, your freckles. One voice, two voices singing. We kicked our feelings so far out in front of us. Every so often we found one, wrestled it back, chased it with a stick, pinned one to the carpet of our childhoods. It's true, we made several graves for the ones who were missing. When our mothers rang on Sundays, we put the phones in the ground next to the emptiness and grinned till we became finished. At the end of the ringtone, a kiss vanishing along with its two constituent parts. You did something with your hands to something in my chest. Silence. Eventually, we have to pay the mind back. What do you do when you have no positive place to land on, when the only possibility of love in this present tense is a karate kick, one good handstand, collecting things as we go? I ate the way you smoked a cigarette. I've eaten several friendships like this until there is nothing, solo, tears sliding down my isolated chin, a door clicked shut. Outside the window, our feelings. On the monkey bars, our feelings on the playground, on swings, building sandcastles in the sandpit. Inside the window, my open shirt, the open fringe. Outside the window, the back of you, please turn around. A dog is chasing a crisp packet. Inside the window, one toothbrush, a half-finished shoe rack. I'm sorry we existed like this. From a place beneath the earth, your phone, not mine, is ringing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And shall we take some questions from the audience? I don't see it from here.
If no one has any questions, I'll consider that I've done my job very well. Oh, there's one.
There's one question.
Hello. I just wanted to ask how you got into poetry, how you became a poet when you say you grew up in a house with no books. I'm just curious about that.
Do you want the honest answer? I'll give you the honest answer since we're all friends now, right? So when I moved to London, I made friends with loads of people, right? And they were all quite cool. They all wore interesting clothes, right? and they were all in bands or they were artists or whatever. And I was like, fucking hell, I wish I could wear interesting clothes, right? But I thought, in order to wear like interesting clothes, you have to do something interesting, right? And I couldn't play an instrument, and I can't paint or draw or nothing like that. So I thought, well, I'll just be poetry don't really exist anymore, does it? So I'll just be like the UK's first contemporary poet. And then, so that's what I did. And here I am, the world's first contemporary. I realised, obviously, I started going to a class because I was like, well, they probably need to know about me, don't they? Like, I can't just sit in, you know, if I'm going to be a famous poet, then, and, you know, be allowed to wear a hat or something, then I need to put myself out. I went to this my friend actually booked me into a beginner's poetry workshop. It was really beneath me, do you know what I mean? Like, beginners. I was like, and obviously they were just like really, really patient with me actually. Like, I went in once and do you know, there was a band in the UK called the Libertines? Yeah. And Pete Doherty, everyone was like, Pete Doherty's a poet, right? And I thought, I know what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to fucking take in some Pete Doherty lyrics, right? That's going to blow their mind, isn't it? And obviously they'd all heard and massively dismissed Pete Doherty as a poet because his lyrics are terrible. But like, I thought it was like a huge revolutionary act to do that. But like I'm saying, that was just one example of like how a class full of people, like a community really that I've grown up with, and a teacher called Roddy Lumsden, who was lovely, like kind of were just really, really patient and allowed me to sort of develop without massively ridiculing me, which is actually what I deserved. So that's it, yeah. And then, you know, from that, I won like a competition, and then like when you win a competition, people ask you to do readings, so then you have to like write more, and then and it kind of just went on like that really. And then I ended up going because I graduated when I finished school. I didn't have any GCSE. It's called GCSEs in the UK, and I didn't have any. So I had to, but when you're a mature student, you can kind of go to university as a mature student, and they like make allowances because of like life experience, and also because of like I'd had a few publications by that point. So I went to Burney's Uni, Brunel, and did a degree in creative writing, and then I kind of, you know, it all kind of segued into other bits, and eventually I got I'm desperate to stay at Brunel. Like, did an MA there, did a PhD there, you know, taught for a bit. And so when I did the PhD, that kind of really opened my eyes to you know, socio-symbolic value systems that made me really angry and then gave me something to write about, I guess.
There's a
I was fascinated to read about your literary saloons, and I wonder, in King Street and others, there's this book, Follow the Trail of Moths, which is lovely. Are you still doing that, and can we join?
So weirdly, what happened was, yeah, so I moved into this house. There's this poet that I really loved called Annie Freud. And I walked into the house and I looked at the room and I was like, I bet you I could get Annie Freud to read here. And then I did, and it kind of developed from that. So we do bits and, you know, but then what happened was, the reason I had to stop it is because the last one had 150 people at it. And they basically said that I was going to get kicked out of the house if I carried on doing them, because it's some square somewhere decided that that was a breach of the tenancy agreement. But then just recently I did do one, just September. I had a poet called Will Harris and a poet called Lucy Mercer and Richard Scott in my living room reading their new work to a group of people, yeah. And then we couldn't, it's too complicated for me to like set up like a live streaming thing. Like, I couldn't do it. So I got this guy to record it, and then he kind of put it out afterwards. But I'm going to do another one in May. So I don't know, yeah, maybe you can come. You can listen to, his name's RG. It's the podcast that he does is called RG's Pickle Jar. And normally it's like he gets a poet to read a poem that they love and then talk about it. But then for these ones, he kind of like does a special one where he records everyone reading in my living room. It's just, you can't fit everyone in my living room. And plus, I don't want some people to know where I live. Do you know what I mean?
So maybe one last question. Richard Scott, by the way, he will be in Berlin in September, reading at the House for Poetry.
Richard Scott is well worth, and he's also one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. He lives really close to me, so we go for little walks around the park. He's absolutely lovely, yeah.
I love him. I wanted to do an event about sex in poetry, and I was in Soho, and I saw the book Soho, and I read into that, and it's full of sex and great, great poems.
He said, actually, because there's that, I've forgotten what the, Joel, what's the, in education where like any queer reference or whatever was banned? What was that called?
Section 28.
Section 28, right? Because Richard Scott grew up within the Section 28 thing, he couldn't find any literature about him or about his experience, right? So, like, he said to me, in Soho's first book, he tried to put a dick on every single page so that there's something for the next generation of queer people to... And he did largely achieve that, so it's well worth looking out for just for that. Apart from that, it's very good.
But now we're talking about Richard Scott. But isn't there another question for Wayne, maybe? One last question? No? Oh. Okay, there's one question.
So, welcome to Berlin.
Oh, cheers. I love it here, by the way.
Yeah. So, your thoughts on the city and class thing here. How do you observe that? What is your comment on the,
Oh, man, I don't know enough about Berlin to start saying stuff about its kind of class system and stuff. I've had a few mates that have lived here, and I've come over a few times and stuff like that. And it seems just like my observations on the city is it's just better than London. Like, people seem to have a much more laid-back attitude. Apart from this nasty woman that yelled at us in a coffee shop earlier, because, like, she was, I don't know what was going on there. There's something deeply upsetting. But, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, everyone seems, it seems like a much more kind of slower, to an extent, way of being in the world. And they also seem to value, or people seem to actually be valued as humans a bit, which in the UK is not happening at all. And even though I don't really agree with capitalism, if you want capitalism to succeed, you sort of at least have to a little bit look after your workforce, which these lot are not doing in the UK at all. Like, they're fucking horrible. Like, you have to be there to believe some of the shit that they're trying to do at the moment. The immigration. You've got this woman called Suella Deville, and she seems like to acknowledge that, yeah, everything that they're doing with migrants breaks every single, like, law, but they just do it anyway. And there doesn't seem to be any consequence. Even, with Brexit, which is ridiculous, like, it's been proven so many times, so many different kind of laws and, rules were broken in the way that they kind of promoted and sold that to a public that were already unhappy. But then nothing happens. They're like, oh yeah, we did break some laws, sorry about that. Anyway, we're already out of the European Union now, so enjoy your ridiculous new passports, And that's basically where we're at. So I don't know about the class system too much, but I do, I'm hugely jealous of it. Every time I come here, I just like look at it and think, crikey, this is actually how it's possible to live. But unfortunately, where we come from, it ain't. There's no investment in the arts now. Humanities are getting gutted. They want everyone, the humanities and arts especially, is a museum for the rich to look at. There's no new artwork is supposed to exist, but rich people can go and understand about the history of art, and that's like a playground for them. Everyone else just has to get a factory job or keep the industry going. That's how it is at the moment. On that note, it's been lovely.
Yeah. I want to thank you, Wayne.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you. And buy the books, they are great.
Thank you. We could probably go on moaning a little bit, but there's so much creativity coming out of the UK, and you've been a wonderful example. Thank you so much for this, both Matthias and Wayne. We enjoyed it very much. So we are breaking for lunch now till 2 o'clock, after which we will have Joel performing. You have lunch on the first floor, but you can eat anywhere because it will be a bit, we are a large crowd, so just pick up your lunch. I've got the workshop rooms ready, but I will announce that after Joelle's reading where they are. So enjoy lunch.